Welcome, Dayan, to Metallarium Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Dipygus. I think this correct pronounced, and also about this self-titled album, Dipygus, and more things related to the metal world. So we start by asking a common question: How has the band been during the last 3 years? Because your previous album, Bashmit, was released in 2021, and now we have your third album in a row.
Um, so over the last few years, we recorded Bushmeat right at the sort of start of the pandemic, and then it didn't come out till 2021. We recorded Wet Market right after that in June of 2021. So it was actually a few years before all those recordings came out. Actually, there's still a few that haven't come out. There's going to be on a split with Sadistic Drive from Finland. So there was a bit of a gap between 2021 and when we just recorded the last record in 2023. But I had moved to North Carolina from California, and Sam and Clarissa live in Oregon, so it's sort of hard to coordinate that. And aside from the 2022 tour we did, there had been much band activity until we just recorded the last one.
Okay, nice. Well, I remember when I heard for the first time Bushmeat for Head Split Records, and I bought it immediately because I really love that album. Now I remember that I spoke with you for written interview at that time, and from the Bushmeat. Now 3 years later, we have this Dipygus. And what did you decide to put to this self-titled album as like the band?
Like what went into it differently from Bushmeat?
No, about the name in general, because
I think we just kind of decided that since we'd been around since 2013 and we've kind of changed the sound a little bit over the time, but the new material was kind of a synthesis of everything that we had done. It had the longer tracks as well as the more short grindy ones and the samples and everything, so it was kind of like the more representative. We kind of all felt like it had been a good self-titled statement, so we just decided to go with that. And it's unexpected, I guess. You don't really usually see a band do a self-titled record third, so it's just a choice that we ended up making, I suppose. Maybe we'll do another one down the line, who knows.
Okay. Talking about now this new album. The first album was, sorry, I don't know what happened with this. Okay. Talking about from this Bushmeat and from this new self-titled album, Dipygus, I saw that you entered with the Memento Mori Records, and now you are sharing, like I think both labels with Head Split Records and Memento Mori sharing the responsibility to edit or to release this album, Dipygus. So how was the transition to enter to Memento Mori?
Raul from Memento Mori had contacted us after our first record came out, and then did Bushmeat, and I guess he really liked that one. So pretty shortly after that, he asked if he could do another record with us. That was years ago now, and we loved the CDs that came out, and he had pretty good distribution, so we of course agreed to that. Head Split. We've known Dylan for years. We played a show with one of his old bands, Hacksaw, in Washington, I think in 2018. And he had expressed interest in working with the band, and he ended up doing the CD release of Wet Market. We had and still are working with the label that had put out most of our records on vinyl, Expansion Abyss. But he's kind of winding things down, and he had already put out 2 of our records last year, the demo and Wet Market LP. So Dylan took over the tape release of that, and then is doing the tape for the new record as well. And Crypta the Wizard out of England is doing the LP for that one.
Okay. Now compare. I remember when I hear that Us, well, later than Bashmit because I discovered the band with Bashmit and love it. Then I bought the Death Us later, and the first two albums are more cavernous style, more underground stuff. But when I hear this DP Juice is more a little more clean in some ways because but that's my point of view because I'm the reviewer interview from a web scene. But from your point of view, which are the biggest difference that exists compared to the previous ones from this new album?
I think with Death Ooze, it was a different lineup of the band too. So Sam, who currently is playing guitar as well as Dustin, played drums on Death Ooze, and he's got a different style than Colby does. Sorry, Bog Stomper, I think is how I should be referring to him. But so he is less more of a traditional death metal style, and I think that has a lot of influence on it. On top of we've been playing for 10 years. None of us are like professionally trained musicians or anything like that. So I think just getting better over time kind of lends one to writing less simple music. Not that Death Thieves wasn't weird in its own way, but I think we kind of always wanted to write the sort of material that we write now, but we weren't as maybe adept at doing so. But from early on, I mean, the original logo of the band is clearly a Voivod nod. So there's always been kind of that undercurrent of sort of weird, not full on prog, but different type of riffing. And I think we've just got better at playing that. And also now that Sam plays guitar, he's been writing songs for the band. So like the two Crystal Kong songs on Wet Market he wrote, and then Sacral Brain, the super long song on side B of the new record he wrote. And he's got a lot more of a background in sort of surf stuff and psych and less like straightforward death metal. So I think that gives it a much more unique sound than maybe the earlier material, which is kind of more par for the course, old school death metal style stuff.
Mm. That is an answer that has me interested so many times because it's not the first time that I haven't heard it. Speaking of each time that they become that all musicians become better musicians and recording and composing because 10 years passes the first album, etc. and more things. Obviously, other bands pass 30 years, 20 years, and they get better and better recording, composing, the more big stuff. It's a curious thing because, and for this question, so do you think this effect is are good or bad for the band? Because mostly people in the world prefers to do a more, as I mentioned, more cavernous. But
Yeah.
when you play much better and compose much better, el ta 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 disappears completely. It's more technique with the hands, more excited. You get much better at the recording process. So for you, is this effect is good or is bad for the band?
That's interesting. I think with Dipygus and probably most bands feel like they put out their better material once they're better musicians. When I think of bands that I listen to, almost none of them I think did their best work when they were the best musicians. So I think there's definitely something to be said for the early stages of a band when people are more it's probably less of a thing nowadays when there's tons of access to YouTube to learn how to play instruments and all that sort of thing. But particularly with bands I love from the 80s or the early 90s, I think when they're trying to emulate other bands and not doing the best job of it, you kind of have the more interesting stuff put together. And that is not something that I think can be replicated once you do know how to play your instruments better. Like, no one's ever going to be able to recreate Obsessed by Cruelty or something like that after they've been playing guitar for 30 years. I think there's a sound that comes from the inability to fully play well that I really enjoy. I'm not sure that that's that universally loved of a thing, but at least for the styles of metal I prefer, I usually like it when bands aren't as good musicians. Now, speaking as someone currently in a band, it's a lot more satisfying to be able to play the way that you want to play and sort of accurately play the riffs that are coming in your head. I think to me, all of our new material is a lot better than Death's, but that was also associated with just the recording process. It was the first time we'd really put together an album in a studio like that. And there's a lot of things that I would change about it now. I think it's fine for what it was. Bushmeat, I have no issues with. Like, I think that's a very solid release, and I love the new record too. So it's pretty hard to disentangle from being the musician versus being the listener. I would hope that we have enough of a sense of identity with the band and the type of riffs we write and the sorts of songs that we do that it's never going to become, over the top technical in a way that loses the spirit that has it. So I think we'll be able to keep the sound steady, but I think you can lose a bit of charm the better you get. So hopefully that doesn't happen.
Okay. Oh, to do or to make death metal, there is always a degree of technicality to do it because it's normally. And it's not like the heavy metal, thrash metal, power metal that is more easy to compose this kind of rims or this kind of styles. It's not. I mean, these styles are no bad. Are well good band styles, etc. So, and obviously the music for these styles are more simpler than the thrash metal, even from the black metal. As you compare the first albums from Mayhem, from the first albums from Morbid Angel, the technicality is so abusive for the first album, the Morbid Angel or Death or blah blah. So also, what do you think? What's your point of view now? You are playing old school death metal as the concept, old school death metal, but at the same time, a new bands appear with the concept technical death metal. But as I mentioned it, so the death metal since the first time that you hear the first album is it's very technical. It's not easy to do death metal. So what's your point of view? This kind of difference that's appearing in old school death metal with technical death metal.
I don't listen to a ton of what's probably tech death. I mean, there's some. It depends on where you really would draw the line there. Even bands like Death, I'm not super into personally. I know like my band members for sure are, so I'm not speaking for the whole band there, but I'm a lot more interested in stuff rooted in punk. Like that's a lot of the music that I first got into. So if things don't have sort of a primitive punkiness to it, it's a lot harder for me to get into. I find those bands very impressive. Like anytime we've played with more technical bands, watching the musicians is like, quite an experience. Particularly, I would say like technical death metal drummers are really able to bring something to bands that maybe more primitive drummers don't for that style. But I just tend to like things a bit more simple, I would say. Even with Dipygus, the more technical riffs, they're not like musically written. Like they don't, I wouldn't even know how to really write in fancy time signatures or anything like that. It's more just figuring out how to play a riff that's just more complex, but still sort of, in the way I see it, rooted in more simple forms of music. I respect technical death metal musicians a lot, but the more technical things get, usually the less interested I am.
Okay, interesting. A detail that is now back on the is back to hear music is the way that you hear music like the 40s and 50s, when the music spread just by singles at that time. And now, as you can see now, now a lot of labels are releasing just singles or videos for singles, no full albums, or perhaps just EPs for these kind of aspects. If you obviously for the collection is not good because the collectionist prefers to have the album complete in general, some ones prefer the EP, or but like the old ones prefer a vinyl on the in the single. So for you, like you are for this new generation doing death metal for this generation. So what's your point of view about this new, bueno, this new retro movement to hear musics just with singles and not like the always, like the album, full albums, etc.
I mean, personally, I, since I was 13, have been an obsessive record collector. Like, to me, I I agree that it's a very, specific time and place that sort of the record album came to be a concept musically. I guess we're dealing with pretty much just like the 60s through the 90s or whatever, but to me that's still like the best way to present music. I'm just very attached to the 30 to 40 minutes, maybe longer if it's double album, whole piece of art. And I mostly listen to full length stuff. um, I love like new wave of British heavy metal. There's tons of bands that have singles only, and if I love 7 inches, I think if 7 inches were how all these singles were being distributed and people were really into those, that I would like. I think a lot of the time it's maybe a cheaper experience if people are not sort of immersing themselves in records. I think, the sort of trend to consuming most of your music on the internet, people probably don't fixate on it in the way that with a more limited availability, if you've got 10 records, you're going to obsess over the details of those records. And I think most of the best bands kind of grew out of that type of obsession. I think just the short-livedness of a single, if it's only meant to be kind of consumed in passing before you get to the next single and all that, it doesn't do much for me. I'm sure most people listening to metal these days are doing so on Spotify and things like that. I've never had Spotify myself, but I can't, if they're enjoying it, good for them. I'm very set in my ways for kind of a more traditional approach, but yeah, I would like to see things kind of more go back to a whole album focus, but I don't know if the audience isn't there for that, then they're not. And it seems like metal's quite popular through the new means, so maybe that is the way of the future. I can't imagine Dipygus becoming a sort of band that releases, just individual songs. We did in promotion for our records, that's all set up by our labels. We don't really have, I'm terrible at internet promotion, and Dustin runs our Instagram page. We're not like a very technically savvy band in that sense, so really the labels handle all that stuff. But I'd like to think, if people hear a song or two that they like, they'll come around to listen to the full thing. Because with the exception of Wet Market, which is kind of a compilation that we did of a bunch of what were to be smaller releases that didn't end up happening, all of our albums have been composed to be listened to. Like, they've got a structure to them, kind of like a different structures between them, but they've all been very deliberately put together. So in a perfect world, that's how I think people should listen to them, but they're free to do whatever means they would like to for that.
Okay. So now, changing the subject, a detail that always enter in Dipygus is the idea of placing prehistoric things on its covers. Or as I said, cave people on the cover art, this kind of aspect. And it's curious because the music is very related with very cavernous. It's very related with the cover arts in this case. So who came with the idea or the approach to talk to put on the cover arts this prehistoric or these cave people on the cover art?
I'm not sure who, well, Sam, Dustin, and I were the ones who formed Dipygus in 2013, and pretty shortly after that, we had our first vocalist, Eric, join. I'm not sure who was probably the first one to do that. Both Dustin and I are archaeologists in our professions. So there's a bit of that just, when we formed the band, we were in school. So there's, I don't know, I think like the song Coffin Stain, I remember I came up with the title for that in a archaeology class because it just sounded like something, off an autopsy record or something. So I think that sort of just blended into it. From the start, I've done pretty much all of the visual stuff for the band. I haven't done any of the paintings, but all the like drawings and collages and all that. So I kind of tried to have an approach that was a blend of just stuff that I found interesting, and that my band members also like sort of cryptozoology, but also the caveman stuff and the prehistoric things, and also kind of like Mondo cannibal film type stuff, which is that Impetigo was a huge influence and is a huge influence. I mean, in terms of metal bands, that's probably my favorite extreme metal band that would be out there. I'm just obsessed with Impetigo, and also have a obsession with cannibal movies and a lot of very tasteless trash from back in the day. So it's kind of like a blending of all that together. I'd like to think it has kind of a unifying theme to it, but it's really just been there from the start. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a specific moment in time where we made that decision. I know, yeah, I think it's been increasing since we did the band. The first demo, it's more of a blend of like oddities, sort of almost like a Ripley's Believe It or Not type weird things and movie stuff. But then by Death Ooze, we had a few more prehistoric things. Then Bushmeat, we kind of definitely leaned into that. And with like kind of human evolution, like early hominid stuff. I don't expect most people ever would have looked into it, but like the track on Bushmeat, Osteodontocratic Savagery, is based on the theories of this guy, Raymond Dart, who, we're going very outdated anthropology here, but just like kind of blending real Australopithecine stuff and all that in with the totally nonsense movie things, I think kind of creates this effect where it's different than most of the ways people would present those things. I'd probably put a lot more thought into composing it than anyone does in consuming it. I'm not sure that is really taken by people who see it. It's really just kind of cool death metal aesthetic, and that's fine, but it is pretty intentional in terms of kind of bridging the real world stuff with the fake stuff, with movies and sort of pseudoscience and weird creatures and all that. Yeah, hopefully that's an adequate answer.
Oh, okay, don't worry, don't worry. So now we are very close to this interview with Dayan, and for this aspect, what kind of plans do you have for this new Dipygus album? Perhaps embark a little tours in North America, or perhaps in US, or who knows? Perhaps you will come to Latin America, or just plans to go to Europe. Who knows?
So we've got a tour the last week of March up the west coast of North America. We're starting in LA. Then I think we're doing a show in Atascadero, Oakland, Santa Rosa, Seattle, Portland, and Vancouver. And that's going to be with Anthropophagus, who are also on Headsplit Records. That'll be really cool. We did one show when we recorded our album over the summer, but we haven't really played live since 2022, living in different states. So I think those are going to be really good. The Portland ones with Torturac and Hemorrhoid, it's kind of like a Headsplit Records showcase thing. So that'll be sick. We have very loose plans to do a short European tour in 2025. None of that's actually booked yet, but hopefully that comes to fruition. We'd love to play Latin America or Asia or anywhere else, but since we all live in different places and have different jobs, it's kind of hard to synchronize it where we can all get time off and everything. So it's never going to be the sort of band that plays, like month-long, really expansive tours, but we kind of try and do special spots there. Maybe we'll end up doing some festivals. That would be cool. But really, the American West Coast tour and probably the European tour, if that can happen, are, I would imagine, what we'll do kind of around this album cycle. We've already got our next EP is in the writing process. I think Dustin has a song completed for that one. And then we know what we're going to do for the album after that. So I think it's probably going to be a more recording focused band for the most part going forward. Not that we won't do shows, but it's easier to get together just for like a small period of time and do album recording than it is to actually have to do the rehearsals and then tour and make that work with everyone's time.
Okay. As you mentioned in the previous answers, you told me that you are a collector of music since you started in this world of metal world. So now, as you can see, a lot of bands are releasing new albums, releasing new EPs, releasing new music in general, in all formats, tapes, CDs, vinyls. Now it's very difficult to get in touch with a lot of music because there is a lot of releases each month, each end of the week. With this kind of Bank and Friday, we have a lot of Bank and Fridays to buy a lot of things. So, but as also, I saw that a lot of new bands and old bands, not even more. I saw that these bands, new and old, can or don't want to buy more music for the new bands. Just buy perhaps the old reissues or this kind of stuff. No buy new bands, no buy new material, just all reuse this kind of stuff. So what's your point of view as a collector, seeing that the perhaps a fan that you know, a fan from Dipygus, not buy the new album, just hearing streaming, but obviously they have a band also, but that they also then buy the new stuff.
Well, I have been a music pirate since I was young, so I totally get just streaming stuff. If you don't have money, I think music should be accessible to whoever wants to hear it, especially if you're dedicated enough to kind of track down rips of whatever. I think bands should buy records. It's weird to me to think that people would be involved in underground music or something and not have it as like a very focal point of their life beyond what they're creating. I'm sure there's plenty of bands that don't, but it doesn't make any sense to me. I constantly spend whatever money I can get on new stuff. I think you should be buying stuff. Actually, like just from here, like Worm Face. If no one's heard Worm Face, it's fantastic. And then this Dysmorphia tape. I don't remember where they're from, but I'm like, those are just recent things I was listening to that, like, there's tons of good shit out there. And I don't have as much time to kind of focus on all the new bands that I once did, but Head Split, I love pretty much everything they put out and end up grabbing lots of stuff from there. There's cool stuff everywhere, and if you're making music, you should probably, I would think, be consuming as much music as you make, but I don't know that everyone shares that view. I totally get it if, it's a lot of money to keep up with stuff, and I certainly don't actually keep up with every new thing that comes out, but there's lots of good stuff, and bands, if they want to be active in the underground, I think definitely should be doing their best to support other artists.
Okay. And one of the last questions, one detail that as you are a collector and as me is obviously to say always to your friends, to other bands, is perhaps this band must be the band me more important than it is now. That is now perhaps Bull Thrower. We spoke in on with Metallica and stuff and say that the Bull Thrower need more attention or will Bull Thrower will be has to be a mainstream band with Morbid Angel, with a lot of bands, but Bullthrower is this is underestimated for a lot of people. It's not like a huge band that there is. So for you as a collector, for you, which band for you deserves to be on the five of death metal bands for all generations?
Like a top five?
Yes, your top
Um,
five, but no,
well,
not usuals. No more Angel, no Cannibal Corpse, no the side. A band that it
okay.
was there, but no see by the lights. It's under the lights, but it's as good as them.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably most people know Impetigo, but I don't think they get as much reverence as they deserve. Like seems like there's tons of people into Mortician in the last few years, and I like Mortician, but I don't think Mortician's half as good as Impetigo in terms of the sort of interestingness of their music and the catchiness of it. Like for horror-based death metal, it doesn't make any sense to me that that's really taken off, and it still seems like people don't maybe resonate as much with Impetigo as I would think they should. I just think it's like the pinnacle of that style of music. Let me think. Uh, I the Transgressor album. I don't know how much people care about that one, but I think that's really like up there with as good as sort of Death Doom stuff gets. That's just fantastic, and people, I guess, follow Anatomia a lot, and I love Anatomia too, and Necrophile. But the Transgressor record, I think is as good as anything. Cyanide. I don't know. Do people give as much appreciation as they should to Cyanide? I don't know. I don't see that around as much. They're certainly fantastic. Rotrevor, I love that record. I'm not that into like the later. I think they did some reunion stuff, but the record and the 7 inches are perfect. Then Infester. I think they're sort of a hyped band, but probably not to the degree that that record's good. Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully that's some
Okay.
bands there.
Okay. Well, Dayan, the sad times arrived at this interview. I hope you enjoyed this one like me.
Yeah,
Terrific
thank
guy,
you.
love this new album. It's a great one. I did my pre-order, so I hope arrive soon
Awesome.
from Memento Mori. And perhaps you want to add something to your Latin American fans and Metallica followers.
We would love to get down to Latin America whenever that's possible. Um, so if anyone has interest in um, anything going on down there, feel free to email us, Dipygus, Ooze, at gmail.com. And then we've also got Instagram that you can hit us up there. I love just all South American, Central American music. Some of the best extreme metal out there. I actually just somewhere out there I just got the that Anal Vomit demo. I forget which one it is, but that it's so unbelievably good. I think it's like the best thing they ever did. And one of my best longtime internet pals who I lived with for a while, Rafael from Peru. He's in Finland now. He's got his band Extinguished that hopefully we'll be able to play some shows with at some time. And he's just always sent me great
Mhm.
Latin American metal, some of the best stuff. There's this zine that just came out. It's a zine, but it's a book, Zombie Dance, about 90s Brazilian black metal, and it's one of the coolest things that I've seen in a long time. So I don't know if that's still out there, but anyone interested in that stuff, Zombie Dance, it's just fantastic. Yeah, we'd love to get down there at some point. So anywhere around the world, we would love to play. So please get in touch.